Good afternoon, good morning. This is Mark Johnson from Loyalty360. I hope everyone's happy, safe, and well. I want to welcome you to another edition of our Leaders in Customer Loyalty series. In this series, we talk to the brand leaders about what they are seeing and hearing on the front lines of customer channel and brand loyalty. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Stuart Foster. He's the president of Hagerty. And for those who don't know who Hagerty is, they are an automotive insurance company based in Traverse City, Michigan. And they're the world's largest provider of specialty insurance for collectible vehicles. Very interesting to know. So Stuart, how are you today?
I'm great. Great, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks.
And I will correct you. We're not an insurance company, but I'm sure we'll get into that.
Okay. I don't. Okay. Then I will have to take that up with my writer, with my content editor.
No worries.
Together. Wonderful guy. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and everything you do at Hagerty?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm president of Hagerty. I look after all things related to actually loyalty and customer engagement. We are a membership-based organization that really supports automotive enthusiasts. So yes, we do sell insurance, but we do so much more than that. And so my role is to actually drive that customer engagement with the brand through a collection of integrated offerings. So we have a beautiful business of recurring revenue bundles in a number of areas, but my job is to look at those products and services and position them towards the membership so that they become more engaged with not only the brand, but the hobby itself.
Okay, great. So can you talk maybe a little bit more about the hobby and maybe history of Hagerty, kind of all that you guys do?
So
I got wrong in the beginning.
Yeah, people are surprised when I tell them this, but there's close to 70 million people in the U.S. who are actively engaged in the automotive hobby. That's collecting, driving,
70 million?
Attending events.
Wow.
It's actually quite a big addressable market. We started as an insurance brokerage more than 20 years ago. Actually, our roots started in insuring wooden boats. And that's one of the reasons we're in Traverse City, Michigan. It was a family-run business. The founders couldn't find anyone to underwrite their classic cars and their wooden boats. And so they started an insurance brokerage focusing on that. And the business grew and became largely still a specialty insurance brokerage. But really in the last 10 years or so, we have grown much far beyond being just an insurance company. And as I said, we have a membership offering called the Hagerty Drivers Club. We have physical locations called Garage and Social, where you can store cars, and they have a social club. We're the largest provider of automotive intelligence for collectible cars. So if you're familiar with like the Kelley Blue Book for the valuation of cars, we have a tool called the Hagerty Valuation Tool that captures all the data of older cars, even more modern cars, changing hands. What are they valued at? So if you want to know what that Camaro you own is worth, you go on the Hagerty Valuation Tool and punch in the make and model, and we'll tell you the range depending on the quality of the car. So we're really a full lifestyle brand that really goes after this segment of automotive enthusiasts and gets them to be engaged and passionate with the hobby of driving.
That's awesome. Well, we look at the value of the car. Obviously, it's a very interesting time now to look at valuation of automobiles. Right now, the used car market, as you know, is going through the roof. Do you see that in the collectibles as well? Are they having more value as well, or is it just more the everyday kind of your standard drive?
Yeah, it's hard to say in total aggregate because if you take, and this has to do with how we look at segments, but you take some of the really older cars, the Duesenbergs and the Packards, and that were really appealing to a generation that's now getting quite on, right? They're in their 80s because those cars they grew up with. Those cars are actually sort of flat to down in value. And that's really from a demand side, right? There's fewer people who are into those very, very older cars. Where we see growth is in the cars of sort of the growing generation. So, the boomers are growing, the Gen X. And so certain segments are just through the roof. One example are Broncos and Land Rovers and a lot of these off-road cars from the 70s, 80s. I mean, these are growing in price, and it has to do with, a lot of it is what was cool when you were 16, right? when you're 16 and you become a driver for the first time legally, the things that are in and around you are going to stick with you for a long time. So a lot of growth in those newer segments in terms of value, and some of the older segments are not. So it varies depending on the age of the consumer.
That's awesome. That's interesting. Well, I'm curious, what age do people most often get involved in kind of collecting or being a hobbyist?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely starts young. People, people get into the hobby usually through a family relationship. It might be a father-daughter, it might be a father-son relationship. Our founder, got into this because he found in a barn an old Porsche 911 that he bought for $500 and renovated it with refurbished it with his father. And, now that car is worth a lot more, but, so people start at quite a young age, but, in terms of obviously owning and collecting cars, it has a lot to do with wealth. So as people grow their wealth and as they get a little bit more older and have more disposable income, of course, that ownership is going to grow later. So we have definitely an older demographic because historically the people that have collected cars tend to be older, 50s, 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
But we're seeing a huge growth today among millennials, even Gen Z getting into the hobby.
Okay, interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about the Hagerty Drivers Club, kind of how it works? Very interesting kind of entity you have there.
Yeah, it's a membership program that we put together that offers auto enthusiasts engagement with our brand and access to this hobby that is not just around insurance. So there's really kind of 5 elements to it. One is access to content. So there's a Hagerty Drivers Club magazine that's actually today the 3rd largest automotive magazine in the country. So they get that delivered to them, and it's exclusive to the members. We have a lot of online content, video and editorial content. Some of that content is exclusive to Hagerty Drivers Club members. They get access to the valuation tool, which again is limited to the general public, but you get full access to that as a Hagerty Drivers Club member. They also get discounts and offers from a lot of our automotive partners, and some of those can be automotive, California car covers or griots or Coker tires, Michelin, for example. So some ongoing benefits through a number of our partners. And then what's really in demand, and it's quite exciting, is the events. So Hagerty Drivers Club, we put on thousands of events around the country every year. Some of these are cars and caffeine that are just congregating events. Some of them are rally drives. Some of them are daily drives. So we do a whole lot of events around that. And then the last piece of the Hagerty Drivers Club is the emergency roadside services. So we have a program that includes towing and lockout and battery replacement and bring you gasoline if you run out of gas, because classic cars and cars that are not driven very often sometimes break down. And so the Hagerty Drivers Club is another protection piece, so that when you're out and about, we'll send not just a tow truck, but a flatbed, because it's probably your baby that you want taken care of. And we'll deliver back to your garage or the garage of your choice. So it's quite a nice emergency roadside plan.
That's awesome. You mentioned the Hagerty's Drivers Club magazine. Can you tell us a little bit more about that publication and potentially how it unites the members and kind of builds the passion for the community?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably we get so many great comments from our members about it. They can't wait for the next issue. So it's mailed directly to them. It's a printed magazine. It comes out 6 times a year, and it covers a variety of subjects. So there are contributors in there like Jay Leno and Wayne Carini have regular columns. Some of the issues may talk about motorsports. Others may talk about hot rods and modified. There's always articles in there about what are the trends in the market from our automotive intelligence business. Where are prices going? How did the auctions fare, for instance? And there's information there on our partners and some of the offers. And so I can tell you, people can't wait till that magazine comes. And when they read it, They really feel connected. There's profiles in there of other members. It really does bring the community together.
And so you mentioned how large is the publication for the print magazine?
Yeah, we've got a reach of close to 3 million,
Wow.
just the magazine. So it's shared quite, beyond family members and other people in the same household. So we see a good reach there.
Okay, great. And interesting, Jay Leno, as everyone knows, kind of a huge kind of a car guy.
Yeah, very big car guy.
I watched the Tim Allen show he's on right now. I guess it's kind of wrapping up, but it's interesting to kind of see his role and just how he's so passionate about his car. I mean, every role he's been in, he talks about it. So that's interesting. That's great.
He's a good friend of Hagerty and been a great contributor from a content perspective.
That's awesome. Can you define what customer loyalty means to you and to your organization?
Yeah, I mean, we really measure, we call them lifelong fans, right? So we measure loyalty. First of all, we really consider ourselves a community. Hagerty really is a community of automotive enthusiasts, and we look at it on 3 levels. People are at sort of the most basic level are what we call fans, right? So they might consume some of our content. They might subscribe to a newsletter. They might follow us on social media. Those are really just our fans. They're engaged with us on a superficial level. Once they create a login and they start to get some more access to some more exclusive content and things on the portal, we consider them a guest, and they might be also a guest at one of our events, right? So the sort of next level of engagement is a guest. And then the 3rd level is member, where they've actually purchased one of our annual products. That might be insurance, might be the Hagerty Drivers Club. So loyalty for us is a progression of that engagement and how long they stay with us. We measure loyalty. Obviously, we measure NPS. We have a very high NPS, close to 90%. We look at our retention rate. Our retention rate is 94%. That's a very great measurement to have of loyalty. But we also look at the average number of years. Once people come with us, we know that they stay with us an average of 9 years. That's demonstrating the loyalty. So there's a number of metrics we use, but it all funnels back to this idea of creating lifelong fans. And that's the goal of all the people I work with, is how do we continue to drive and create more lifelong fans.
Okay. And you talked about the NPS and the retention rate. That 94% retention rate is for the insurance product or for the drivers club or for both?
It's 94% for insurance, and we're about 90% for the Hagerty Drivers Club. So combined is about 92.
Wow. That's year over year then?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And actually, when you get to about the 3rd year, it sticks at about 95%. So, one of the things I've learned, working across a number of brands is, obviously once you get to a threshold of 2nd, 3rd, 4th year, potentially, in some cases, in my past experience, I worked in the hotel business. I previously worked at Topgolf, and it was based on visits. And it was a similar kind of concept. Once you have a frequency to a certain point, and you deliver quality service, you exceed expectations, and the way you interact with your guests is above and beyond, you will keep them. And for us, it's really by year 3 they stick with us for a very long time.
Okay, that's awesome. So when you look at customer loyalty, what does customer loyalty mean to you and to your association? And to your organization, should I say? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best ways to think about that is how powerful word of mouth is, right? So we are starting to measure referrals, and I think that's the ultimate measure of loyalty, is that if someone refers this business, whether that's refers insurance or the Hagerty Drivers Club to other people. And I was recently at the Amelia Island Concours just this past week, and talking with some of our members and standing with another automotive enthusiast who isn't a member. And I didn't have to sell. I had my member doing it for me, telling the other enthusiasts, oh no, you gotta do it. Their people are amazing, and the pricing of their insurance is great. And so that word of mouth marketing is to us the most powerful really accreditation, if you will, of loyalty. And, you know, brands that build communities, to me, are the ones that have the strongest loyalty. And that's what we're doing. We're really building a community of automotive enthusiasts. You know, an average insurance company touches their customer somewhere between 2 and 6 times per year. Think about it. How often do you engage with your insurance broker or your insurance company? Not very often. You buy the insurance, you wait a year, you renew, or you change and you shop around. You don't have any emotional connection to that brand.
Yeah.
And that's why we've gone beyond the insurance business and built out all these other touch points. We touch our members over 275 times a year. Think about that. That's obviously that's email, that's events, that's the magazine. It goes on and on. The content we're constantly they're engaging with 275 times. So we're creating this community of passionate people. I think the next step, which is really the sort of true value of loyalty, is that peer-to-peer relationship, right? So it's not just a customer with the brand one-to-one, it's really one-to-one to many, and that those many are starting to come together. So we recently just launched something called My Garage. It's on the Hagerty website, and it's basically a virtual social network for automotive enthusiasts. And so you go in, you build a garage, and you put in pictures and profiles of your cars. You can be anonymous, you can be, you know, Stuart Foster, or you can be, you know, Corvette car guy 123. And, you know, if you're someone like Jay Leno, you probably want to be a little bit more discreet. You know, if you're someone like me, you can probably be open. But what it's really allowing is this peer-to-peer connection, sharing, commenting, looking at other people's garages, finding out if you're a Camaro guy, as you are, Mark, like you go and you can search for all the other Camaros that are on My Garage. All of a sudden, you're now connecting within the Hagerty community with everybody else who has something in common with you. And that is a very powerful force for us to keep people in the community and to keep them engaged.
Absolutely. Yeah, we built out a similar community for our members around customer loyalty to do the same thing. Brands can talk about what's working, what's not working, what they like, what they don't like. There's a great deal of power in community, as you mentioned, for sure.
Exactly.
So you seem to have a very unique customer experience, customer loyalty approach. How do you engage or reward your customers?
Yeah, well, we engage them a lot through events. So I think, you know, those, and they get invited to some exclusive events, and that's some of the rewards that they get. But our membership offering really is very transparent. There's not, you know, there isn't a frequency reward. It's an engagement around those special offers and some of its discounts or invitations to events that we engage with them. And it's, again, over 275 times. We are starting to pilot a high net worth membership product that we'll be piloting this year. We'll be launching it early next year. And in a way, that's a bit of, I mean, you could consider that rewarding, but it's actually, how do you engage a different segment? Now, these are people with large collections that maybe look like some of the things you see behind me. You know, they have on average 10 plus cars. They have different needs. They're very wealthy. They have people taking care of their collections. And so putting together a program that suits their needs and has very specific events, very specific product offerings, very specific benefits through the roadside. And we'll have a dedicated magazine that speaks to them in their language and about the topics they're interested in, which are much more around collecting and Concord level type of activities. That's one way we're doing it.
Okay, great. Personalization is very important. You kind of talked about the kind of network, net worth, and kind of the high net worth individuals and what they have interest in. And what does personalization mean to you, and how is your brand working to improve your personalization efforts? You've talked about a number of different things, but would love to kind of have you touch on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll answer two ways. One is, you know, personalization requires a huge technological lift. We're in the midst of a digital transformation that's going to help us get better at that. But it really starts with segmentation. So when you take those roughly 70 million automotive enthusiasts, they're not all the same, right? So we are segmenting our approach in the way we look at it. So there are, you know, there are many, you can break this down even further, but there are by and large roughly 5 or 6 segments across automotive enthusiast space. You've got kind of classic sports car collecting, you've got supercars and exotics, you've got motorsports, very different needs. A lot of these cars aren't driven on the street, right? So actually, we're not insuring them. We're insuring their track days, for instance. We need to provide them transportation services. So they need to transport them on trailers to the tracks. Hot rods, modified cars. These are very different, people who are really into modifying, changing the cosmetic look of a car, or sometimes the performance of a car. So breaking it into these segments, and high net worth is one of those segments, is how we have different go-to-market strategies for those different segments. And then the tonality, all the way down to the tonality and the visuals that you pick. You can't be talking to high net worth customers and be putting a modified car, a 32 Ford kind of hot rod in front of them. They want to be seeing, beautiful Ferraris and things. So the image that's important, the way you talk to them, the language is very different. So as we feed, even down to the emails we send, understanding, we're able to look at what content people consume on our site. So if you're consuming motorsports content, then you're going to start getting personalized messages more around motorsport. If you are attending one of our Cars and Coffee that might be around a hot rod event, then we capture that data and we're able to personalize some of the content that goes to you. So it's a constant improvement of capturing the information we know about people. One of the great things about us is we have a ton of data because we insure most of our members' cars. So we know where they live, we know how many cars they have, we know the value of those cars. So we can customize and personalize a lot of the communication to them based on the knowledge that we have.
Absolutely. So you talked about personalization, very important. You talked about some of the challenges in going through digital transformation. What's the biggest challenge for you, as a marketer in an executive role, obviously, that you have? What kind of keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the challenge in this business really is probably one of prioritization. There's so many things that we can do. It's really a question of what are the top priorities of the things that we must do. So really understanding the business opportunities and prioritizing them and making sure that that's well thought out, well communicated through the organization, so that everyone is pulling the tips of their oars into the water at the same time to pull in the direction of what you're trying to achieve. I think that's the biggest challenge. There's lots of challenges, as I mentioned, around data collection. We're probably blessed more than some other industries because of the actual regulation of the insurance business allows us to capture more data because of what you have to provide us. But it's really that prioritization of where are we growing, and which, as I mentioned the segments earlier, which are the priority segments, which are the biggest, which are growing faster. I'll give you an example, the sort of modern classics. So from sort of 1980s onward, if you will, like you mentioned earlier about your car, if you have a 2015 Camaro, will we insure that? Of course we will. That is the segment that's growing the fastest. And I think, like all brands and companies, consumers are expecting more and more to be served digitally, not just physically, but bridging the physical with the digital. So bringing the technology that supports that is really important, because that younger generation is demanding it, and they're not going to wait for you. They're going to go somewhere else if you can't deliver it.
Absolutely. When you look at kind of the data challenge, you talked about that a little bit, again, getting all that data is part of that digital transformation. For you looking at data lakes or kind of data silos, there's a lot of acronyms out there, of course.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges you face with data, the analytics, creating actionability, creating actual insight?
I think like any company, we have some legacy systems, right? And so accessing data out of older systems is a challenge, and that's why we're transforming some of what we do. But finding the right data and having a really clear sort of learning agenda behind your data is a starting point. So I think that's a really important exercise for us to do, and for really any brand, is what are you trying to learn? What is your hypothesis? How does the data either support that hypothesis or give you a glimpse into that there's a problem to solve or there's an opportunity to capture, is the biggest challenge of the data, because otherwise you end up with hundreds and hundreds of reports, and centralizing that function within a company as you grow is really important, right? Having not only analysts but data strategists who can actually interpret the data and tell the story so it becomes leverageable insight for the business is always a challenge and a great opportunity.
You mentioned your customers are changing. You're obviously adapting to that with kind of the hot networks club, and then also the magazine for them as well. How are your customers changing, and how are you adapting to that change?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I'm asked often about the impact of EVs, right? Electric cars, and the impact on our business. And the reality is we embrace it, right? I mean, electric cars are here to stay. Autonomous cars will come. But our mission is to save driving and car culture for future generations. So that's why we do things like we have a Hagerty Drivers Academy that teaches young people how to drive manual transmissions. We have a youth judging program that is teaching younger youth how to appreciate cars, how to judge them, how to understand them. I mean, you're talking about opening the hood of a classic car to a 20-something-year-old, and they don't even know what a carburetor is. They don't know what a clutch is. They've just not grown up with that. So, continuing to preserve that culture, we see as just pivotal to our mission. Yeah. We recently launched the Hagerty Drivers Foundation. It's about a $20 million nonprofit. It's investing in a lot of different things that are helping preserve that culture. And one of the things we're going to do is cars at the Capitol. So these are classic cars that are very important, either in their own right or culturally, and they're placed in these glass boxes up and down the National Mall in Washington, D.C. And just by putting that out there and funding activities like that, we are educating people about the cultural, iconic, and historic importance of driving and of cars as a passionate thing, not as just transportation from A to B, because I think that's where electric and autonomous cars will start to be. But the pleasure of driving cars and the enjoyment of driving that Lincoln Continental with the top down and right in the back, there's nothing that beats that.
Absolutely, that's great. What do you think the next big thing for your brand's approach to customer loyalty is? You've got so many things going on. You're doing some amazing things already. So what do you think the next big thing is, or is it one of the things you already mentioned?
Yeah, I think it's this community that I was mentioning that we've just started with My Garage. I think the next big thing is that, some people wake up and go to sleep checking different social medias, right? And some of those have just become marketing channels. And you sort of have lost the community aspect that used to be. I mean, Facebook used to be based around a university when it originally was created, right? And then it became your friend group, and now it's just a media channel. We really think that My Garage will be the virtual community where people come together to look at other people's collections virtually, comment on them, research them, find out interesting information, but probably transact at some point, right? So trade, buy, sell, rent. We already rent classic cars. We have a program called Drive Share, where you can actually rent a classic car anywhere in the United States on a daily basis. And that's part of giving people who don't have cars access to a collectible car on a daily basis. but it's also building a community of people saying, why do I want to, get a Chevy Malibu from Hertz when I can rent a Volkswagen Carmen Ghia if I'm going to go around. Apologies for my four-legged friend here who's
No problem at all. You talked about it, so when you look at the competitive set, the competitive industries, how do you think you're different? Because as you mentioned, you're not just an insurance company, you're much more than that. You're not Kelley Blue Book, you're different than that. And I think one thing that's unique about yours is you have such an emotional connection with your customers, right? Because there's a passion point. So, when you look at the competitive set, who might they be, and how are you different from them?
Yeah, well, I think nobody, a lot of people say this, but honestly, and I've only been with this company, 7 or 8 months now. A lot of people say, well, we don't really have competitors. This is actually one of those businesses where amazingly, that's actually true. So yes, we compete with other insurance companies, but they don't have the media. They don't have the Hagerty drivers. They don't have a drivers club. They don't do events. They don't have the valuation tool. There are some other digital platforms that try to compete with us for the valuation and auction tracking information. They don't have the engagement of the media either, or they don't sell insurance. They don't leverage it to actually help people buy insurance. The reason for the valuation was to help you understand what your car is worth, so that when you insured it, it was insured to the right amount. So no one has this really full circle cycle of engagement around the hobby like we have. So we do compete with some people across spaces. There are bigger media companies, there are bigger insurance companies, but no one brings it together around a single segment the way we do.
That's awesome. And I think the last question I have for you, is what can Loyalty360 do to help you in your customer loyalty journey?
One of the mantras we have as part of our flywheel is that we are a culture based on a growth mindset. So what I find really encouraging at this company is that everyone has that growth mindset. We're always striving to learn. We're always striving to improve every day. We help each other. And so I, for one, and my entire team are always open to ideas, learning about best practices of other brands and other companies, and so welcome that from anybody in the Loyalty360 network, and hopefully I can learn and grow myself from other people's experiences and parallel experiences from different brands and companies.
Okay, great. One question I forgot to ask you about is, partnerships. We have about 130 brands now. They're members of Loyalty360. Lots of fuels, lots of companies obviously can be great partners potentially for you. But what does partnership mean to you and your organization? Because it is definitely something that, especially coming through COVID, that brands are looking to do more and more with going forward. So how do you guys look at partnerships, and what does it mean to your organization?
Yeah, it's a really important part of my organization and an important piece of our business. So we have partners in a variety of parts of the organization. As I mentioned some earlier, we have these discount partner automotive brands that have discount partners. We partner with museums and educational institutions around the country, like the Henry Ford Museum in Detroit or the Peterson Museum in LA. We partner with other media companies like Motor Trend, for instance. So the objectives and goals are different by partners. Sometimes it's about accessing automotive enthusiasts that maybe another partner has some that we can access, and other times it's about adding value to our members, where that company or business can provide a service or a product that is that we can't, and so it augments the value proposition of one of our products. So it's the wide gamut. Partnerships for me are brands and companies that are congruous with our mission. They're congruous with our with the segment, with the TAM that we're looking at of automotive enthusiasts, and how can we come together to create a win-win relationship where they can help us with our business ambitions and we can help them with their business ambitions.
That's awesome. Well, that was a great response there as well, Stuart, and very interesting interview. It's not a traditional kind of interview that we do, but these are great. I mean, just one of the things that I love to hear in people's voices, the passion they have for their customers, passion they have for the business, passion they have for their role, and definitely you have that in droves. So it's great talking to you, and it was great learning about what you guys do.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Mark. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, thank you. Thanks everyone for listening, and join us back soon for another edition of our Leaders in Customer Loyalty.